The largest apartment complex fire in Houston history broke out on the near west side today, and as that blaze raged, residents there worked desperately to save what possessions they could. Also, a search continues for 3 people involved in the killing of a Harris County Sheriff's deputy yesterday. Estimates for crops lost during last week's storm could reach well into the millions. And while flood victims try to rebuild their homes, Bay Area shrimpers are trying to save their livelihoods. We'll have these stories and others coming up next here on Eyewitness News.
This is 13 Eyewitness News, Houston's choice for news, with Dave Ward and Jan Carson. The weather with Ed Brandon. The sports with Bob Allen. And Action 13's Marvin Zimler.
Good evening, friends. It is the largest apartment complex fire in Houston's history, and it is still burning out on the city's near west side. Jan Carson has a live Insta-Eye camera at the Woodway Square apartments, the scene of a 7-alarm blaze.
Dave, you can see behind me the firefighters are still trying to put out the flames in a number of buildings here at the Woodway Square apartments. They are happy to report that finally, after 3 hours of intense firefighting here, they do now have this fire under control. A 7-alarm fire. They say they stopped it just short of Woodway Avenue. This fire, fed by intense winds from the south, went from building to building, rooftop to rooftop on the shingle roofs. Fortunately, only one injury to report, a resident who was burned. We don't know what condition he's in. There were a couple of firefighters who were overcome by heat and some by smoke. But as far as loss and damage, that, who knows? It can go into the untold millions of dollars. Thom Dickerson was one of the first reporters on the scene. He files this report.
The scene was one of pandemonium. Fire seemed to be everywhere as firefighters scrambled to battle the blaze, and residents of the apartment complex frantically attempted to save their personal belongings. The fire started in a building near the south end of the huge complex and jumped from roof to roof until within minutes almost the entire complex was totally involved in flame. Houston Fire Chief V.E. Rogers was in the middle of it and described how the wood shingled rooftops were the cause of the fire spreading so quickly.
The situation is the fire started about 2 blocks down inside the apartment, south side of the apartment. The wind and the wood shingles are carrying it northbound with the wind, and it's catching every roof in the project on fire. Are you having problems with water too? Water does not seem to be the problem. The problem is the flying branch and the wood shingles. We feel like we've got it cut off, and the next thing you know, the wind blows it on over to another wood shingle roof, and it's started.
At one point, firefighters had to resort to taking water from the apartment swimming pool to battle the blaze. Deputy Fire Chief Whitey Martin at one point during the raging flame told me it was a classic example of what firefighters call a firestorm.
That's what we call it. The fire is burning up above the second story. It's generating its own wind now. It's sucking it in there.
That's what all this high wind is right now. We're experiencing that. And the flames blowing, the smoke going everywhere.
That's right. It's just like you'd see an open fire, a campfire, something that's generating the draft at the bottom of the fire, and it's just creating a terrible situation.
Residents who weren't trying to save themselves or their property stood and watched the tragedy seemingly in a state of shock.
I think it's terrible.
You lose everything?
It's on its way out right now.
How'd you learn of the fire? How'd you find out about it?
I heard it on the radio.
You were at work?
I was sitting in the dentist's chair.
As photographer Ed Bragg and I moved through the area, we repeatedly heard witnesses describe the scene as, quote, incredible and unbelievable. Although it hasn't been confirmed, it is believed the fire started in an air conditioning unit. One thing is for sure, this fire will certainly go down as one of the worst in Houston's history. From the Woodway Square apartments, Thom Dickerson, Eyewitness News.
And earlier at the height of the fire, when I walked among the burning apartment buildings, it was tragic to see the expressions on people's faces, the shock, the dismay, the alarm as they came home, saw their apartments in flames or perhaps totally destroyed. David Glott has a report on some of the victims.
It was the kind of disaster that nightmares are made of or Holocaust movies based on. For the residents, it was a devastating disaster. Realizing that the fire was spreading, the residents ran to their apartments, grabbing what they could. For some, it was not very much.
Got out of the shower and we saw smoke go by the window, and we came outside and it was about 5 apartments away. We never thought it would even hit our building.
We didn't even take it seriously. Like, we went in to get a couple of things, but we thought we'd come back out, you know, and go back in if it got serious. And all of a sudden it started going, and that was...
How much did you get out?
Hardly clothes.
Just cat. A dog? Ourselves. It's just enough.
For others, more was salvaged, but not enough. This woman took dozens of antiques out of her apartment. She even carried out her birds. But inside, to be destroyed by the flames, were even more belongings. Unbelievable, she said. All the antiques my grandmother gave me are gone. Still others were numbed as they arrived home from work. They had lost everything.
I was at work when we saw it from the office, and by the time I got here, it was gone. It was all caved in.
This is all I could get. We didn't hardly have a chance to get this, so it's all we got. It's not much. We just moved here from Florida. And I guess, I don't know, I don't believe we have any insurance at all for it. I can't believe the way this fire just raged through the place.
Items of clothing, furniture, and memorabilia are scattered everywhere. As one resident told me, I worked from 9 in the morning until 10 at night for a good life, and this is all that's left. It was gone in just a few minutes. David Glott, Eyewitness News.
As of yet, there are no exact figures on the number of apartments destroyed, estimated, however, to be around 500 or so. That means, of course, hundreds of people left homeless tonight, their possessions destroyed, and of course that means problems of where they're going to stay and what kind of conditions they will be living in for the next couple of days. Johnstown Properties has offered plenty of rooms for people who have been victims of this fire. Also other Lincoln properties. The Second Baptist Church that's located at 6400 Woodway is taking refugees. The Savoy Houston Hotel in downtown Houston has 100 rooms they're offering to those displaced by the fire if they can show proof that they live in the Woodway Square apartments. 50 Houston police officers have been called to the scene of the fire to control traffic and, of course, to try to keep away looters. There have been some reports of looting at the scene. They want to make sure that that does not continue. As of right now, we say that the fire is under control. Some of the firefighters have now been able to go home. They are being relieved by other firefighters. It's been a tough battle for these firemen. 7-alarm blaze that is now under control here at these apartments. And we're going to have more available on this fire as soon as we get it. Now let's go back to Dave in the studio.
Thank you, Jan. Ironically, even as this fire was still gaining strength this afternoon, the Houston City Council was to take up an ordinance to restrict the use of wood shingles on the roofs of multi-family dwellings. This fire today clearly shows how the flames spread first along the rooftops as bone-dry wood shingles burst into flame like kindling. The city of Houston changed the building code back in 1963 before these apartments were built and removed a previous requirement that all buildings have fire-retardant roofs. Since then, the building boom of the past 15 years has resulted in whole subdivisions with wood shingle roofs on top of closely packed apartment buildings. This blaze today is the first to develop into a fire storm that threatened to wipe out an entire subdivision, leaping from roof to roof totally out of control. The ordinance brought before the City Council today would restrict wooden roofs on apartments, but not on single-family homes. It would not ban wood shingles altogether, but it would require builders to use a lot of shielding material that would raise the cost of a wood shingle roof so high builders probably would use something else. But even as this blaze was still growing, the City Council voted to table the matter for at least another 2 weeks. Later today, at the scene of this fire, Mayor Jim McCon said he'll bring that ordinance up again at tomorrow's City Council meeting. For many of the victims of last week's disastrous floods, getting started again means drying out and filing insurance claims. But for some victims who make their living catching shrimp out of Galveston Bay, getting started again means starting from scratch, finding another boat, paying bills, and trying to keep a positive spirit.
For all of his 54 years, Frank Harbison has made a living from a shrimp boat. 3 weeks ago, he had $4,400 worth of work done on his boat. Last week, rains from Tropical Storm Claudette wrecked his only means of support. His $45,000 shrimp boat ruined. It got caught in the tremendous currents, emptying rainwater through the Kemah Seabrook area. Frank Jr. had planned to follow in his father's footsteps, but that may change now. The work that supported 5 girls and 1 boy may have come to an end.
Frank, what are you going to do now?
I guess just look around, try to see if I can locate another boat. Try to, get something going here pretty quick. I think we got about 12 days before the big season. That's when we make all our money.
You've lost all your
All my earnings right here. This is it. Everything I had right here. And I had to wind up selling the station wagon and take care of some bills since this happened. And so that's just it. That's all we got. Ain't got nothing else.
Some 19 shrimp boats were damaged or ruined because of the high tides and heavy runoff. Two 40-foot shrimpers were slammed into the beach 2 miles from where they were torn loose from their moorings. The Lucy II had pilings go through it in 7 or 8 places. The Denise Lynn wound up on the rocks with a broken hull. For many shrimpers, a low-interest federal loan is the only hope. Frank Harbison rides on a neighbor's shrimp boat and contemplates the opening of the unlimited shrimp season in 2 weeks, the time shrimpers either make it or go broke for the year. Frank Harbison looks to the open bay and thinks about the boat he wished he had and the future he has to face. From Kima, Sylvan Rodriguez, Eyewitness News.
Those floods that swept through the Houston area caused millions of dollars in crop damage. Hardest hit of the counties around Houston appears to have been Chambers County, where County Agent J.R. Carroll says about half of the 43,000 acres of soybeans may have been lost. About 30% of the rice crop may be lost. Total value of the Chambers County loss could be as high as $15 million. Brazoria County damage, also in the rice and soybean crops. County Agent's office said up to 15% of the crop may be lost. In Harris County, there was relatively little crop damage. County's agent office says there are few crops grown in the southeast portion of Harris County, where the floods were the deepest. Houston police are questioning a woman tonight in connection with the killing of a sheriff's deputy. Al Garza shot and killed last night when 3 people held up Ventura's jewelry store at Richmond and Kirby.
Jewelry store owner Steve Ventura thought the customers looked suspicious. His friend Al Garza, who happened to be in the store, took off his coat so that the people could see his badge and gun. He probably thought the sight would discourage them from stealing anything. Instead, one of them shot him in the head before cracking open the cases and grabbing the jewelry. Garza had been working for 72 hours trying to find a witness in a murder case when he was murdered.
He was using the telephone. He was in the process of serving a paper out of his courts. He was looking up some information. It happened on the spur of the moment. It happened very suddenly. I doubt if he had any defense whatsoever.
Constable Walter Rankin saw Garza just a few hours before he was killed. Garza worked for Rankin 9 1/2 years before joining the sheriff's office.
It was his birthday. He came by to tell all the people it was his birthday, and he was on his way home to have a birthday dinner with his family. He was very devoted to his family.
Police detectives are investigating whether this robbery is connected to a similar one 2 months ago. The mode of operation at Ventura's resembled that used by 3 persons at Bullock's Jewelers on Westheimer. One man has been arrested and charged in that case. He is free on bond. Dan Rosen, Eyewitness News.
The U.S. Census Bureau reported today that Texas is growing so fast that the 1981 legislature will have to redistrict most of the state and add 2 new seats in Congress. The census takers say 10 years ago, the 24 districts averaged 466,000 residents. But now they estimate the population in